Hi, my name is Rayanne Porte and I'm glad you're here. In this video, I'm going to be tackling the question, is weight fluctuation okay around the holidays? So just to preface this, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my experience, and your experience might be totally different, and that's okay. But I wanted to share a little bit about how God helped me when I had this question in hopes that it encourages you in your journey. Okay, so here we go. First of all, when I was being healed from my food and fitness struggles like emotional overeating and dieting and binging and living this fitness fanatic, hyper healthy life, when I was going through all of those things, God made it very clear when I was eating to zone out, check out, numb out from life. And those were the times when I was emotionally overeating during life's difficulties, during super stressful times. And he was calling me to come to him instead of going to food. But it was really hard to approach eating in joyous times, eating in group gatherings, and eating at events and at holidays, and how to kind of navigate through some of the questions I had around eating in those times, joyous times, versus times where it was super stressful and I was using food to cope and to numb out. So I had the question, okay, God, how do I go to gatherings and eat to enjoy the food without going crazy with it? And is it okay if my weight fluctuates during the holidays? I had all of these questions for God. And so this was basically what God came back to me and said. When I asked him this question, he came back and he said, Rayanne, you know what? When you ask this question, it's like you are looking at life through the lens of works, not grace. And what does that even mean? Well, I was so prone to think that my actions were a determinant of if I was okay in God's eyes. So I was basically looking to God to tell me, okay, Rayanne, if you eat 3 cookies, you're good. But if you eat 4 at that holiday party, oh, that's too much. That's excessively overindulging, right? Or, oh, if I gain 5 pounds during the holiday, that's okay. But any more than that, and that's not okay. And so I was looking to be justified in my actions. And so I was going to God to tell me, oh, you're okay, or you're not okay, and you just need to do this in order to make it right again. And what this is it's, again, looking at life through the lens of works instead of grace. And since Jesus died on the cross and rose again, we are under grace. We aren't under the law. And so God was encouraging me to kind of flip my perspective to look at life through the lens of grace, specifically my relationship with food. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we are saved by grace through faith. And so grace is a gift from God. We are saved from what Jesus did on the cross. We are not saved through anything that we do or that we don't do. Faith is just a response. Faith is how we access the grace that God provides. And so what that means is that we're not saved through anything that we do or don't do with food. Like when Jesus fulfilled the law, all foods are now clean. So we have all foods at our disposal that we are given as a gift from God. And so when we look at food through the lens of grace, that means that we get to enjoy all foods and we get to be grateful to God for giving them to us. And so there are no rules around food anymore. So that means when we go to holiday gatherings, there's no rules that say, oh, if you eat this many pieces of pie or this many pieces of pie, you're either okay or not okay. That's not really how it works because it's all about the heart. God cares about our heart. He doesn't, it's not through our actions that we are saved. And so while we get to live under grace, the Bible also says, do not use grace as a license to sin. And so when I was asking all of my questions to God, that I covered in the beginning. It basically was like I was saying, okay, God, just tell me the line of what is sin and what is not sin. And I'm just going to get as close as I can to it without crossing it. I won't cross it. Well, he was challenging me and he was saying, Rayanne, you're kind of being exactly like the Pharisees when they were running, or they were following the letter of the law, but not following it in their heart. And so he was challenging me to rethink how I was looking at things, to think about it from a standpoint of grace and not works, but also from a sense of when we fully understand grace, our actions become a byproduct of that understanding. And so our faith is a belief, it's not an action. Of course, the actions, the good works and the actions come after the belief, but it's not actions first and then belief. The actions are going to naturally flow just as a pure byproduct of the belief and of the faith that we have. And so life is about receiving the gift of God's grace, and it's about a relationship with Him. And so that's why it's about connection with Him as opposed to eating this and not that, or taking inventory of what I'm eating. Again, the question that I could be asking instead of is weight fluctuation okay around the holidays? I could ask, how is my heart? And I could do a self-inventory, or I could ask God, reveal to me where my heart is at. So one thing that helped me kind of understand where my heart was at, or understand the posture of my heart, was when God showed me the difference between pride, shame, and conviction. Pride and shame are from the devil, and conviction is from God and from the Holy Spirit. So let me talk about the difference between the three in the context of food. So let's first talk about pride. So when we are in kind of a mode of restricting our food, or when we're kind of in like diet mode, pride shows up and it says, oh, I'm going to go to these holiday parties and it's going to be so awesome. I'm going to stick to my diet. It's going to be so great. I don't need to depend on God. Well, pride also shows up when we are in a mode of overindulgence, and that basically just says, oh, I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want, any kind of quantity I want. I can just like do it all in the name of enjoyment. I don't need God. And that's basically what pride is doing, is saying that I'm worthy on my own. I don't need God. I have zero kind of focus on God at all. And it's basically me. So now let's shift and talk about shame. So where does shame show up when we are in that mode of restriction? Shame basically shows up and it says, you are a failure, you are a terrible person because you ate one cookie, and that is not in your diet plan. Cookies are bad. Shame on you. You as a person are unworthy, or you're experiencing feelings of worthlessness. Where does shame show up in the realm of overindulgence? Basically, shame says, oh, shame on you for eating all that food. And again, shame, basically, the devil is saying that you as a person are wrong. And what does shame lead us to do? It basically leads us to hide from God and to fear punishment. And again, both pride and both shame are from the devil, because pride eggs us on to forget God and shame eggs us on to hide from God. So neither of those are anything close to what conviction is. So now let's talk about conviction. So conviction is from God and from the Holy Spirit. And basically what conviction says is it's basically God saying that I desire for you to return to me. You had a moment of disconnection from me, and I long and I love to welcome you back into connection with me. So he wants to shower us with his love and his forgiveness, because why? Because he knows that his peace is good for us. It's not him coming down on us. It's not saying to us, we are wrong, we are bad. It's saying that we are righteous, not because of what we've done, but because of what Jesus did on the cross. So he sees us as righteous because of what Jesus has done. But we had a moment of disconnection, and we get to He gets to bring us back as his lost sheep. He gets to prodigal son us right back into his arms. And so the thing about conviction is that we get to embrace and welcome conviction. We don't need to hide from God. It's a pure act from love because he knows it's what's best for us. And so when it comes to food at these joyous gatherings, I'll get to this more at the end. But again, it's going to be a conversation. It's nothing that I can weigh in on at all. But for me back then, it was a conversation with me and God where I got to talk to him and I got to say, okay, how can I stay in connection with you at this party, recognizing that food is a gift from you that I love, that I get to enjoy, and I get to enjoy all the things about the holidays. Like the holidays in and of themselves are such a good gift from God, but they aren't God himself. So how can I make sure that I'm holding them to the expectation of being a gift and not looking to them to give me the things that only God can give as the good gift giver. So the last thing I want to say about conviction, again, is just to reiterate that it's something that we as Christians, I think, so often shy away from, but it's such a good thing when we turn to conviction, when we know and have that feeling that the Holy Spirit's convicting us, we get to welcome it right in. Or there might be times when I will ask God, like, convict me if there is sin in my life and it's not already, it's not already apparent to me, because we always know that it's better to be in connection with Christ, because that is where we experience true peace and true hope and true joy. It's not in this place where a lot of times we do feel that remorse. We feel that inner, just that inside feeling of knowing what it's like to be disconnected from Christ. So to wrap up this video, I just wanted to reiterate, when we think about the questions of, is weight fluctuation okay around the holidays, or how do I go to parties and enjoy them but not go crazy and excessively overindulge in all the things there, we get to go back to the question of, God, how's my heart? And this is such a beautiful conversation that you get to have with him. And it's the same conversation that he takes us through with all the gifts that he's given us in our life. So take, for instance, social media. God, when is social media in my life a helpful thing? When is it keeping me in connection with you and in connection with the loved ones you've given me in my life? And when is it starting to turn into something that's harmful and maybe keeping me from closeness with you? Same thing with money. Is the way that we're stewarding our finances keeping us closer to you and drawing us closer to you? Or are we maybe hoarding instead of giving? Or are we maybe spending frivolously on the other extreme, right? And our relationships with our kids, when is that keeping us closer in connection with Christ? Or when are we starting to worry and have anxiety about our kids and we're not trusting God with these gifts that he's given us? So the last thing I want to cover is just a few other tips on how we stay connected to God during the holidays. So I wrote down a couple things I would love to share with you. I love to connect with God in my one-on-one time. I know that December is such a busy time, but that's the time that I love to be able to protect in my life. That for sure helps keep me in connection with Christ. It helps me keep God. And so another way is that I recognize that holiday events are a way to stay connected to him. And how is that? I'm grateful to him for them. I don't see like holiday parties or all the things that I do at the holidays as anything that I'm doing. It's all gifts that God has given to me that are from him. That helps keep my heart bent towards gratitude with all the good things that come along with the holidays. And then the hard things that come along with the holidays, I get to keep my heart bent to him and trust him with them. I'll talk more in future weeks about the hard things that come with the holidays and how to navigate through that, especially in the area of food and fitness in our body. But gratitude and trust are always things that I keep in mind, especially around the holidays. And one last question that I just ask myself on a daily basis is God enough for me in the good? Is He Himself enough for me? And is God enough for me in the hard? Is He Himself enough for me in the hard? And then once I am content in Him being enough for me, then it's so much easier to have expectations for expectations on like the gifts that He's given me in my life. And so when I've actually like cleared out any expectations for these gifts that He's given me in my life to be God, it actually is so much easier for me to enjoy them. I don't have these high expectations of them to fulfill me and to make me whole, because that's God's role in my life. And so then once all that is stripped away, then it actually like allows me to enjoy them as gifts. And then the last thing I want to say is, one other thing that helped me is that I started to see more of God, not only like, of course, present in the joyous times, but when I talk about being present in the hard, once I started to recognize that God is fully present in my day-to-day of the mundane, or of the like, if I'm staying in connection with Christ in September, October, November, that allows me to stay in connection with Him in December. So like I used to have this mentality of like, work hard, play harder, right? So let me just drudge through all these months that suck just so that I can get to the fun time. And then when I got to the fun time, it became this overwhelmingly large celebration because I was expecting it to like, again, I was just expecting it to be this great, big, awesome thing that made all the hard months worth it, if you will. And instead, when I stripped all of that away, I got to see God equally in the hard months where we are, we just have the normal day to day. And I got to see Him equally present in December, which is a really joyous time. And then what happened was it allowed me to then, once January came, I didn't feel like I needed to swing back into, I need to drudge back into work, and there's no holiday time off in January, and I gotta go back on my diet because I over celebrated in December, right? So when we recognize that God is an unchanging God, it helps keep us stable. It helps us see Him in all of the joyous moments of the mundane and of the hard. Like if we keep an attitude of gratitude and trust in the hard, it also helps us keep the attitude of gratitude and trust in the joyous moments. And so then we won't feel like we need to swing the other way come January because we didn't excessively overindulge in December. And we know that this conversation with God has just been carrying us all, or keeping us steady Eddie throughout all of the fall months and the winter months, and now into the new year. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions to ask me about this video, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is @food.fitness.andthegospel. And I did recently write an ebook. If you want me to send that to you, I would love to send that. Just reach out to me on Instagram and I will shoot that over to you. All right, I hope you have a great week. I will see you back here next week.